The Galactic Council had been running the galaxy for 12,000 years. 247 different alien species worked together under one government. They made laws, settled arguments, and kept the peace across thousands of star systems. Every species that learned how to travel faster than light got an invitation to join. It was tradition. It was the way things had always been done. When humanity invented faster-than-light travel in 2187, the Council sent their standard welcome package. Captain Daniel Hayes was the one who found it. He commanded a ship called the Aurora, and they were exploring near the Kepler system when they picked up the signal. It was an automated beacon, left there specifically for humans to find. Daniel read through the message carefully. The Council was inviting Earth to join them. They wanted humanity to come to their capital world, Valorous Prime, for something they called an ascension ceremony. There were files attached explaining how the Council worked, what rules humanity would need to follow, and what benefits they would receive. The rules alone filled 3,000 pages. Daniel sent everything back to Earth and waited for instructions. The response came 3 days later from Admiral Lisa Chen. She was speaking for the United Earth Defense Coalition, which meant she spoke for everyone. Her message was short and simple. "Thank you for the invitation. We will pass," that was it. No long explanation. No apology. Just a polite no. The Council members were confused when they received the message. They checked their records. In 12,000 years, only 6 species had ever said no to joining. 5 of those eventually changed their minds after they saw how good life was in the Council. The 6 species destroyed themselves in a nuclear war before anyone could help them. The Council decided that humans must not understand what they were turning down. They probably needed more information. Someone needed to explain things better, so they sent 3 different ambassadors to Earth, each with a different approach. The first ambassador was named Kelric. He belonged to a species called the Thenari. They were known for being generous and friendly. Kelric arrived at the Mars orbital station carrying gifts. He brought examples of advanced technology that was thousands of years ahead of what humans had. He brought medicines that could cure diseases Earth still struggled with. He brought promises of even more if humanity would just join the Council. Director Paul Martinez met with Kelric in one of the station's conference rooms. Paul was polite and professional. He accepted the gifts graciously and listened to everything Kelric had to say. When the ambassador finished his presentation, Paul smiled and thanked him for coming all this way. "We appreciate the offer," Paul said, "but we are developing our own technology. We are happy with our progress. We do not wish to join the Council at this time." Kelric tried to argue. He explained how much faster humanity could advance with Council help. He talked about all the knowledge that would be shared with them. Paul just kept smiling and shaking his head. Eventually, Kelric left, confused and disappointed. The second ambassador was High Counselor Veshikara of the Zorathi. Her species believed in being direct and honest, even when the truth was uncomfortable. She arrived at the Europa Research Facility and asked to speak with someone in charge. They sent Colonel Amy Roberts. Veshikara did not bring gifts. She brought warnings instead. She told Amy about species that had refused to join the Council. Most of them ended up isolated and alone. Some were attacked by enemies and had no one to help them. Others destroyed themselves through war or pollution. The galaxy was a dangerous place for species that tried to face it alone. Amy listened carefully to every word. When Veshikara finished, Amy thanked her for her concern. Then she explained something to the alien diplomat. "Humanity has been having wars for thousands of years," Amy said. "We have nearly destroyed ourselves more than once. But we learned from our mistakes. We survived. We are still here. We know how to handle our own problems. We do not need the Council to protect us from ourselves." Veshikara argued that the threats out in space were different from anything humanity had faced before. Amy disagreed. She believed humans could handle whatever came their way. The meeting ended with Veshikara leaving, frustrated that her warnings had not worked. The third ambassador was different from the other 2. Harmonizer Quilvin belonged to a species called the Melodic Concordance. They believed that all species should work together in harmony, like instruments in an orchestra. Quilvin did not bring gifts or warnings. Instead, he appealed to humanity's emotions. Dr. Chris Bennett met with Quilvin at a facility on Earth. The Harmonizer spoke beautifully about unity and cooperation. He talked about how wonderful it was when different species worked together toward common goals. He described the art, music, and culture that came from mixing so many different perspectives. The council was not just a government, he explained. It was a family. And families were stronger together. Chris found Quilvin's speech moving. He genuinely appreciated the sentiment behind it. But his answer was still no. We understand the value of cooperation, Chris said. We trade with other species already. We are willing to be friends and allies. But we prefer to maintain our independence. We want to create our own culture, sing our own songs, as you put it. We can do that better if we are not bound by council rules. Quilvin left Earth sad but understanding. He reported back to the council that humans were not ignorant or foolish. They simply valued their freedom more than they valued membership. The council held an emergency meeting to discuss what they were calling the human problem. For the first time in thousands of years, a species had clearly and repeatedly refused to join them. The ambassadors had all failed. What should they do next? Some council members wanted to pressure humanity into joining. Others thought they should just accept the refusal and move on. After days of debate, they reached a compromise. They would officially reserve a seat for humanity in the Grand Assembly Hall. The seat would remain empty, waiting for the day when humans changed their minds. The seat was built from crystal and starlight, positioned between two other species in the Great Chamber. It was beautiful and it was empty. Every council member who walked past it was reminded that somewhere out there, humanity was doing things their own way. On Earth, people heard about the empty seat and laughed. President Linda Hayes spoke about it in a speech to the Global Assembly. The council built us a seat, she said. How kind of them. But we never asked for one. We never needed their approval to go into space. We never needed their permission to build colonies or explore new worlds. That seat can stay empty forever as far as we are concerned. We will be just fine without it. Humanity had made their choice. They would walk their own path among the stars. 50 years passed after humanity's refusal. The empty seat in the Grand Assembly Hall gathered dust. Council maintenance workers cleaned around it every day, but no one ever sat in it. Some council members had started to forget why it was even there. Others could not stop thinking about it. The seat bothered them more than they wanted to admit. It represented something that had never happened before. A species that simply did not care about joining their great organization. It felt like an insult even though humanity had been perfectly polite about everything. Meanwhile, humanity was busy. They were not sitting around on Earth waiting for anything. Human ships spread out across space like seeds on the wind. They found planets that could support life and started terraforming them. They built colonies on 93 different star systems. Some of these systems were in areas the Council considered their territory. But humans did not ask permission. They just went and built. The terraforming crews worked hard. They took dead planets and made them bloom with life. They brought water to dry worlds and oxygen to airless ones. Within a few decades, gardens were growing where nothing had grown before. Human engineers were proud of their work. They were changing the galaxy one planet at a time. Mining operations followed the colonies. Humans found asteroid belts full of valuable metals and began extracting them. Their mining ships were efficient and fast. They could strip an asteroid clean in weeks. Other species had been mining for thousands of years, but human methods were different. They were aggressive and effective. Trade ships bearing Earth's blue and white emblem started appearing everywhere. They traveled the same shipping lanes that council members used. They paid docking fees at stations and conducted business honestly. But they never asked for permits from the council. They never acknowledged the council laws applied to them. This created an awkward situation. The council had laws about who could travel where and what they could do. But humanity was not part of the council, so technically those laws did not apply to them. Yet humans were operating in council space, following some rules but ignoring others. Commander Jake Sullivan was in charge of defending the human colonies. He built something called the Frontier Defense Network. It was a series of automated platforms surrounding every human settlement. These platforms had weapons, shields, and sensors. They could detect threats from far away and respond quickly. The council noticed these military installations and became concerned. They had something called the Non-Proliferation Accords, which limited what kinds of weapons species could build. Council inspectors were sent to examine the human defense platforms and make sure they followed the rules. Jake met the inspectors at the edge of the new Seattle system. He was polite but firm when he spoke to them over the communication channel. "I appreciate you coming all this way," Jake said, "but Earth never signed your accords. We are not bound by your weapons limitations. You are welcome to observe our defenses from where you are, but you will not be allowed closer. These are our star systems. This is our territory. We defend it however we see fit." The inspectors were shocked. They tried to explain that the accords existed for everyone's safety. They argued that unregulated weapons could lead to an arms race or accidents. Jake listened patiently and then repeated his answer. No. The inspectors left angry and filed a complaint with the council. The council held meetings about what to do. Some members were very upset. Senator Kyaran of the Solmari Union gave an angry speech about humanity's behavior. "They build whatever weapons they want," she said to the assembled representatives. "They expand into new systems without considering our preservation protocols. They refuse mediation when disputes arise with neighbors. This is dangerous. This sets a terrible example. What if other species decide to follow humanity's lead? Our entire system of order could collapse." But not everyone agreed with her. Chancellor Brahm of the hegemonic spheres stood up to respond. "What exactly have humans done wrong?" he asked. "They have not attacked anyone. They have not stolen territory that belonged to others. They have not broken any agreements because they never made any agreements. They trade fairly, they pay their fees. They simply refuse to accept our authority over them. Perhaps the problem is not their behavior. Perhaps the problem is that we cannot stand seeing someone operate outside our control." The debate went on for months. Some wanted to impose sanctions on humanity. They wanted to forbid council members from trading with human ships or visiting human colonies. But this idea had problems. Many independent merchant guilds loved doing business with humans. Frontier worlds that were far from council core systems found human traders reliable and fair. If the council tried to cut off trade with Earth, they would hurt their own people more than they hurt humanity. Other council members suggested using military force. Perhaps a small demonstration of power would convince humans to reconsider. But this idea was rejected quickly. The Thanari military advisors ran simulations and studied what they knew about human defenses. Their conclusion was concerning. Humanity's defensive capabilities looked very strong. Any military conflict would be expensive and bloody, and the outcome was not guaranteed. No one wanted to start a war over an empty seat, so the seat remained empty. The debates continued, and humanity kept growing. Back on Earth, President Linda Hayes was still in office. She had been elected to a second term, partly because of how she handled the council situation. She gave another speech to the Global Assembly, this time about humanity's progress. 50 years ago, we refused the council's invitation, she said. Some people thought we were making a mistake. They worried we would be alone and vulnerable. But look at what we have accomplished. 93 colonies, thriving trade, advanced defenses. We did all of this ourselves on our terms, without asking permission from anyone. She paused and looked around the chamber at the assembled human representatives. The galaxy is vast and full of wonders, she continued. We are exploring it. We are learning from it. We are adding our voice to its story. But we are doing it as free people. We are not beholden to the council or any other authority except our own. Their invitation was kind. Their offer was generous. But it was also unnecessary. We never needed their approval to claim our place among the stars. The speech was broadcast across all human colonies. People heard it on Earth, on Mars, on the settlements around Alpha Centauri, and in the terraforming stations near the galactic rim. The message was clear. Humanity was proud of its independence and had no intention of giving it up. The empty seat had become a symbol. For the Council, it represented humanity's stubborn pride and their dangerous insistence on doing things differently. It was a reminder that their authority had limits. Not everyone wanted to be part of their grand organization. For humanity, that same empty seat meant something completely different. It meant freedom. It meant the right to make their own choices and live with the consequences. It meant that no matter how powerful or ancient or wise the council claimed to be, humans did not have to bow to them. The seat would remain empty. Not because no one wanted to sit in it, but because sitting in it would mean accepting things humanity refused to accept. It would mean following rules they had never agreed to. It would mean surrendering sovereignty they considered sacred. Years turned into decades. The situation became normal. Council members got used to seeing human ships in their space. Human colonies became reliable trade partners. Some friendships even formed between individual humans and aliens. But officially, Earth remained outside the Council system. The empty seat gathered more dust. And humanity continued on its own path, free and proud and answerable to no one but themselves. The Dracoth were not part of the Galactic Council. They had been kicked out 600 years ago for doing terrible things. They broke laws about how to treat other thinking beings. They attacked their neighbors without reason. They conquered and enslaved anyone weaker than themselves. The Council had voted to expel them, hoping it would stop their violence. It did not work. The Dracoth just moved to a different part of the galaxy. They built their own empire in the northeast quadrant, far from Council space. Over the centuries, they conquered 17 different species. Billions of beings lived under their brutal rule. The Council knew about this but did nothing. The Dracoth were no longer their problem. Now the Dracoth were expanding again. They had grown strong and confident. Their empire needed more resources and more slaves, so they started looking toward Council territory. The Pelios cluster was their first target. It was home to a species called the Polari. They were a gentle people who loved art and music. They had no strong military because they believed conflicts should be solved with words, not weapons. The Council had always protected them. The Polari trusted that protection. The Dracoth armada arrived without warning. One day the sky over the Polari homeworld was clear and blue. The next day it was black with warships. Massive dreadnoughts blocked out the sun. The Polari tried to communicate, to negotiate, to understand what was happening. The Dracoth answered with orbital bombardment. Cities burned. Forests turned to ash. Within 3 weeks the Polari homeworld was conquered. Those who survived fled in whatever ships they could find. Millions died. The survivors who reached Council space told horrible stories. They spoke of systematic extermination, of cultural destruction, of cruelty beyond imagination. The Galactic Council held an emergency meeting. Every representative was present. The chamber was filled with angry voices and fearful whispers. Something had to be done. The Dracoth could not be allowed to continue. Speeches were given. Each one was more passionate than the last. Senator after senator stood up to condemn the Dracoth actions. They called it barbaric, unacceptable, and evil. Everyone agreed something must be done, then came the votes. The Council passed resolution after resolution. They imposed economic sanctions on the Dracoth Empire. They froze any assets Dracoth citizens had in Council banks. They issued a strongly worded statement demanding the Dracoth withdraw from Pelios and face justice for their crimes. The Dracoth ignored everything. Their ships kept moving forward, conquering more territory. The Council's peacekeeping fleet was sent to stop them. The peacekeeping fleet was designed for specific jobs. They patrolled trade routes. They stopped pirates. They responded to distress calls. What they were not designed for was fighting a real war against a powerful enemy. The ships were not heavily armed. The crews were not trained for intense combat. The Battle of Karis Station proved this. 12 Council frigates engaged a Dracoth battle group. The fight lasted less than an hour. All 12 Council ships were destroyed. The Dracoth lost only 2 vessels. It was a massacre. The survivors who escaped in life pods told stories of weapons that cut through their shields like paper, and tactics that overwhelmed their defenses completely. Panic spread through Council space. If the peacekeeping fleet could not stop the Dracoth, what could? Member species began preparing their own defenses. Some started evacuating border worlds. Others pleaded with the Council to do something, anything, to protect them. Ambassador Trevik of the Valdari Commonwealth stood up during another emergency session. He was old and respected. When he spoke, people listened. "We must seek aid from any source that can provide it," Trevik said. His voice was steady despite his age. "I propose we formally petition humanity to join our defense coalition. Yes, they have refused Council membership. Yes, they operate outside our authority. But they are strong. Their military appears formidable. We need their help." Silence filled the chamber. Pride and desperation fought in the hearts of every representative present. For decades, they had looked down on humanity's refusal to join. They had seen the empty seat as evidence of human stubbornness and arrogance. Now they needed to ask those same stubborn humans for help. High Counselor Veshkara, who had been one of the original ambassadors sent to Earth so long ago, volunteered to make the journey. She was older now, but still sharp. She remembered her conversation with Colonel Amy Roberts. She remembered how confident the humans had been in their ability to handle threats. Maybe that confidence had been justified. She traveled to Earth aboard a Council diplomatic ship. When she arrived at the orbital headquarters, she expected coldness or smugness. She expected humans to enjoy seeing the council humbled. Instead, she was greeted by General Nathan Cross. He was a military man through and through. His hair was gray and his face showed lines earned from years of hard decisions. He invited Veshkara into his office and offered her a seat. Then he listened. Veshkara explained the situation. She told him about the Polari genocide. She described the Battle of Karis Station. She admitted that the Council's forces were not strong enough to stop the Dracoth advance. She made her petition clear. The Council was asking for humanity's military assistance. In exchange, she said, we offer full Council membership with voting rights. We offer technology sharing agreements. We offer formal recognition of all your territorial claims. We offer everything we once wanted you to accept. General Cross sat quietly for a long moment after she finished. He looked out the window at the stars. Then he looked back at her. Where are the Dracoth now? He asked. Veshkara blinked. I do not understand. Are you negotiating for better terms? No, Cross said. I am asking where the enemy is so we know where to send our ships. The Dracoth are killing innocent people. That is all I need to know. I will need to consult with Earth's leadership, but I expect we will deploy within 48 hours. But what about our offer? Veshkara asked. Council membership, technology recognition? Keep it, Cross said simply. We did not need your approval before. We do not need it now. We will fight because it is the right thing to do, not because you offered us a seat at your table. Veshkara felt something strange. It took her a moment to recognize it. She felt ashamed. Here was a species they had looked down on, and they were offering help without demanding anything in return. The contrast with the Council's endless debates and political calculations was striking. Within 2 days, the Earth Defense Fleet mobilized. 67 warships powered up and prepared for combat. These were not exploration vessels or trade ships. These were machines built for war. Every human colony contributed something. New Seattle sent 5 destroyers. The Mars shipyards provided cruisers. Earth itself dispatched the crown jewel of its fleet. Admiral Kate Morrison commanded the battleship Valiant. It was the largest warship humanity had ever built. The ship was covered in armor plating that could withstand tremendous punishment. It bristled with railguns, missile pods, and point defense systems. When Council observers saw the specifications, they felt nervous. If the humans ever decided to use such ships against the Council, the peacekeeping fleet would stand no chance. But the Valiant was not heading for Council space. It was heading for the war zone, toward the Dracoth, toward danger and death. Admiral Morrison stood on her bridge and looked at her crew. They were young and old, men and women, veterans and rookies. They came from every human colony. The Dracoth think they can do whatever they want, Morrison told them. They think they can hurt innocent people without consequences. Today we teach them different. Today we show them that humanity stands against evil wherever we find it. Not because someone asked us to. Not because we will get something in return, but because it is right. The fleet jumped into faster-than-light travel. They were heading into battle, into the unknown. But they were not afraid. They were ready. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Karis system. Admiral Morrison studied the tactical display on her bridge. The Dracoth were still in the system, holding position around the captured space stations. Their formation was confident, almost lazy. They did not expect serious resistance. The Council ships they had fought were no real threat to them. Morrison smiled grimly. The Dracoth were about to learn that humans were very different from the Council's peacekeepers. All ships, she broadcast to the fleet. Battle formation Delta. We hit them hard and we hit them fast. Do not give them time to organize. Do not give them time to think. Show them what happens when they hurt innocent people. The Valiant led the charge. Behind it came cruisers, destroyers, and frigates, all moving in perfect coordination. Years of training and simulation had prepared them for this moment. The human fleet moved like a single organism, deadly and precise. The Dracoth noticed them approaching. Their commanders were not worried at first. 67 ships seemed like a manageable threat. They had destroyed 12 Council frigates without breaking a sweat. These humans would fall just as easily. They were wrong. The Valiant opened fire first. Its main railguns launched solid metal slugs at incredible speeds. The physics were simple but devastating. When something moving at a significant fraction of light speed hits something else, the result is catastrophic. The Dracoth shields were designed to deflect energy weapons like lasers and particle beams. They did almost nothing against kinetic projectiles. The first salvo punched through a Dracoth cruiser's shields and hull like they were not even there. The ship broke apart, its reactor going critical and exploding in a brilliant flash. The Dracoth fleet suddenly became very alert. Missiles followed the railgun fire. Human ships launched swarm after swarm of smart missiles. Each one had its own guidance system and could adjust its course to hit moving targets. The Dracoth point defense systems tried to shoot them down, but there were too many. Missiles got through and slammed into armor, tearing open hulls and destroying weapon systems. The Dracoth responded with their own weapons. Their heavy particle beams were powerful and accurate. The human frigate Dauntless took a direct hit and was cut in half. Both pieces tumbled through space lifeless. 347 people died in that single moment. Admiral Morrison felt the loss like a physical blow, but she could not stop to grieve. Not yet. Not while the battle was still raging. She ordered the fleet to press the attack. Captain Ryan Foster commanded the destroyer Swift Justice. He led a flanking maneuver that took his squadron around the edge of the Dracoth formation. While the enemy was focused on the Valiant's frontal assault, Foster's ships hit them from the side. 3 Dracoth cruisers found themselves caught in a crossfire. They tried to rotate their shields to protect their flanks, but human weapons came from too many directions at once. All 3 cruisers were disabled within minutes. Commander Helen Price led a fighter squadron launched from the carrier Noble. Her pilots were skilled and brave. They flew their small craft into the heart of the Dracoth formation, dodging defensive fire and hunting for weak points. Price herself targeted the enemy flagship, a massive dreadnought that was coordinating the Dracoth defense. Her squadron focused their attacks on the ship's engines. After multiple attack runs, they succeeded in crippling the propulsion systems. The flagship was left dead in space, unable to maneuver. But the Dracoth were not easy to kill. They had been fighting for centuries. They knew how to hurt their enemies. Their dreadnought soaked up incredible amounts of damage. Even with their shields failing and their hulls breached, they kept fighting. Their crews were fanatical and refused to surrender. The human cruiser Nightfall ventured too close to a damaged Dracoth battleship. The enemy ship triggered its antimatter containment to fail deliberately, turning itself into a massive bomb. The explosion consumed the Nightfall completely. There was not even debris left behind, just an expanding cloud of superheated gas where a ship and its crew had been seconds before. Admiral Morrison watched good people die. She watched ships she had served on get torn apart. Every loss hurt, but she did not flinch. She had seen the reports from Peleos. She had read about what the Dracoth did to conquered populations. This was the cost of stopping them. This was the price of standing against evil. And humanity was willing to pay it. The battle raged for 6 hours. It was brutal and exhausting. Crew members worked their stations until their hands bled. Engineers kept damaged systems running through sheer determination. Medical teams worked frantically to save the wounded. Every person on every ship gave everything they had. Slowly, the tide turned. The Dracoth had started the battle with superior numbers and heavy ships. But human tactics and weapons were better suited for this kind of fight. The railguns kept punching through shields. The missiles kept finding targets. Human ships coordinated with a precision the Dracoth could not match. One by one, Dracoth ships fell. Some were destroyed outright. Others were disabled and left drifting. A few tried to retreat but were chased down by human destroyers. When the battle finally ended, 23 Dracoth vessels were destroyed or captured. The rest fled in disorder, jumping to faster-than-light speed and running back toward their own territory. The humans had won. But victory came at a terrible cost. 7 ships destroyed, 4 more so badly damaged they would never fight again. Nearly 2,000 people dead. Thousands more wounded. The price of the battle was written in blood and sacrifice. Admiral Morrison stood on her bridge and looked at the damage reports scrolling across her screens. She felt tired, older than she had felt just hours before. Around her, the crew was celebrating the victory, but their cheers were muted. Everyone had lost friends today. Everyone had seen good people die. Council observers had been watching the battle from a safe distance. They were stunned by what they had witnessed. Humanity had accomplished in one day what the Council had failed to do in weeks. They had stopped the Dracoth advance. Cold Veshkara contacted Admiral Morrison directly. Her face appeared on one of the bridge screens. "Admiral, On behalf of the Galactic Council, I thank you for what you have done here today. Your victory has saved countless lives. Now we should discuss coordinating future operations. We need to establish a joint command structure so that human and council forces can work together efficiently. Morrison looked at the counselor for a long moment before responding. When she spoke, her voice was polite but very firm. Counselor, we appreciate your gratitude. We will share intelligence with your forces. We will coordinate timing and positioning to avoid accidents. But we will not operate under council command. We did not come here to join your organization. We came here to stop slavers and murderers. Those are not the same thing. Veshkara seemed about to argue, but Morrison continued. My people just died fighting your battle. They did not die for council membership or trade agreements. They died because it was right. Because the Dracoth needed to be stopped. Because innocent people needed protecting. If you want our help, you will have it. But you will not have our obedience. We work with you, not for you. That is not negotiable. The counselor slowly nodded. She understood. Humanity had proven itself willing to fight and die for others, but they would do it on their own terms. The empty seat would remain empty even after all of this. Back on Earth, news of the battle spread quickly. Nearly 2,000 lives lost. So many families receiving messages they had dreaded. So many funerals to hold. The cost of the victory weighed heavy on everyone's hearts. President Andrew Sullivan addressed the Global Assembly. He looked tired and sad. He held a list of names, all the people who had died at Keras. Some have asked why we are fighting someone else's war, Sullivan said quietly. But this was never someone else's war. The Dracoth were not just attacking Council territory. They were attacking civilization itself. They were hurting people who could not defend themselves. That made it our fight. That made it everyone's fight who cares about right and wrong. He held up the list of names. These people understood that. They volunteered to go. They knew the risks. They went anyway because they believed in something bigger than themselves. They believed that humanity should stand against tyranny and cruelty, regardless of politics or membership or approval. His voice grew stronger. We never needed the Council's permission to be who we are. We do not need their approval to do what is right. That empty seat they built for us, they can keep it. We will stand with them against evil. We will fight beside them when justice requires it, but we will do it as free people making our own choices. That is who we are. That is who we will always be. The Battle of Keras was only the beginning. The Dracoth had been hurt badly, but they were not defeated. Their empire was vast and their resources were deep. They regrouped, called in reinforcements, and prepared for a longer war. If they could not push through Council space easily, they would grind forward slowly and methodically instead. Over the next 3 months, 17 more battles were fought across a dozen star systems. Each one was different. Each one was difficult. The Dracoth learned from their mistakes. They adapted their tactics to counter human weapons. They stopped relying so heavily on shields and added more armor to their ships. They spread their formations out to reduce the effectiveness of human missile swarms. Human forces adapted too. Admiral Morrison coordinated with other fleet commanders to develop new strategies. They used hit-and-run tactics when facing superior numbers. They set ambushes using the terrain of asteroid fields and nebulas. They targeted Dracoth supply lines, destroying the cargo ships that kept their war machine running. Captain Ryan Foster became famous for his aggressive style. He commanded a task force of 6 destroyers that specialized in raiding deep into enemy territory. They would strike at Dracoth outposts, destroy what they could, and jump away before reinforcements arrived. The Dracoth started calling him the Ghost because he appeared and disappeared like something from a nightmare. Commander Helen Price was promoted to captain and given command of the Carrier Noble after its previous captain died in battle. She proved to be an excellent leader. Her fighter squadrons were responsible for destroying more Dracoth ships than any other unit in the fleet. She trained her pilots hard, demanding perfection from them because she knew that perfection kept them alive. Council forces fought alongside the humans in every engagement. The relationship was complicated. Human commanders shared intelligence freely and coordinated attack timings carefully to avoid friendly fire incidents. But they absolutely refused to accept Council authority over their operations. Council admirals found this frustrating. They were used to having clear chains of command and organized hierarchies. The humans operated more like independent allies than subordinate units. General Nathan Cross traveled to the front lines to observe the situation personally. He met with both human and Council commanders. He could see the tension between them. The council officers wanted control and coordination. The human officers wanted independence and flexibility. Both sides were right in their own way. Cross called a meeting with Admiral Morrison and her senior staff. "The council keeps asking us to integrate our command structures," he said. "They want unified leadership. They think we would be more effective if we all followed the same orders." "We would be less effective," Morrison replied immediately. "Sir, we win battles because we can think and act independently. We do not need to wait for committee approval before making tactical decisions. The council is too cautious, too concerned with following proper procedures. That works fine for them, but it is not how we operate." Cross nodded. He had expected that answer. "I agree with you, but we need to find a way to work with them that does not create more problems. The Dracoth are dangerous enough without us fighting among ourselves over who is in charge." They developed a compromise system. Human and council forces would coordinate at the strategic level, deciding together which systems to defend and which targets to attack. But at the tactical level during actual battles, each force would operate independently under its own commanders. It was not perfect, but it worked better than either complete integration or complete separation would have. The war continued. Ships were lost. People died. Both humans and council species mourned their dead and buried their heroes. Memorial services were held on dozens of worlds. Parents lost children. Children lost parents. The cost kept growing, but progress was being made. The Dracoth advance had been stopped completely. Now they were being pushed back. System by system, planet by planet, human and council forces reclaimed territory. Liberated populations celebrated their freedom. Refugees began returning to their homes, though many homes had been destroyed and would need to be rebuilt. Captain Luke Bennett commanded a Marine battalion specializing in ground operations. When the combined fleet liberated a world, Bennett and his soldiers went down to secure it and help with the cleanup. They found evidence of Dracoth atrocities everywhere. Mass graves, destroyed cultural sites, facilities that had been used for enslaving and processing conquered populations. The Marines saw things that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. "This is why we fight," Bennett told his troops after they liberated a particularly horrific labor camp. "This is why it matters. The council talks about rules and regulations and proper procedures. That is all fine. But this right here is what evil looks like when nobody stops it. Remember these faces. Remember what happened here. And remember that we have the power to prevent it from happening again." Back on Earth and across human colonies, the war was affecting everyone. The economy had shifted to support the war effort. Shipyards worked around the clock building new vessels to replace losses. Factories produced ammunition and supplies. Medical facilities trained doctors and nurses for combat zones. Families sent care packages to soldiers serving far from home. There was debate about the cost. Some people questioned whether humanity should be spending so much blood and treasure on a conflict that was not directly threatening Earth. Politicians argued in assemblies. Protesters held demonstrations. News programs hosted debates between supporters and critics of the war. President Andrew Sullivan addressed these concerns in a televised speech. "I understand the questions," he said. "I understand the frustration. This war has cost us dearly. Nearly 8,000 human lives lost so far. Hundreds of billions in military expenditure. Entire industries converted to war production. The sacrifices are real and they hurt." He paused, looking directly into the camera. "But let me be absolutely clear about something. We are not fighting this war for the council. We are not doing this for gratitude or recognition or that empty seat they keep offering us. We are fighting because the Dracoth represent everything we stand against. They enslave. They murder. They destroy cultures and crush hope. If we turn away from that, if we say it is not our problem, then we lose something essential about who we are as a species." The speech resonated with many people, but not everyone was convinced. The debate continued. Democracy meant that people could disagree. It meant that questions could be asked and leaders could be challenged. It was messy and sometimes frustrating, but it was how humanity worked. On the front lines, soldiers did not have time to worry about political debates. They had missions to complete and battles to fight. They trusted that the people back home would figure out the politics. Their job was simpler and harder. They just had to win. The Dracoth were being pushed back, but they were not collapsing. Their empire was too large and too established to fall quickly. This was going to be a long war. Everyone understood that now. There would be no quick victory, no sudden surrender, just a grinding campaign that would take years to finish. Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of the Valiant and looked at star charts showing Dracoth territory. So much space, so many systems to liberate, so many battles yet to fight. She felt tired down to her bones. But she also felt determined. The Dracoth had to be stopped. That was not negotiable. However long it took, whatever it cost, humanity would see this through. A young ensign approached her with a message. Admiral, the Council is requesting another coordination meeting. They want to discuss long-term strategy. Morrison smiled slightly. Tell them I will attend, and remind them that human forces will continue to operate independently regardless of what strategies are discussed. The ensign grinned. Yes, ma'am. Should I use those exact words? Be a little more diplomatic about it, Morrison said. But yes, make sure the message is clear. We work with them. We do not work for them. That has not changed and it will not change. The war continued. The empty seat remained empty. And humanity kept fighting, free and independent and answerable only to their own conscience. The end came not with a great final battle, but with slow collapse. The Dracoth Empire had been built on conquest and fear. For centuries they had held their territory through brutal force, but now they were bleeding from 1,000 wounds. Human and council forces cut their supply lines. Liberated populations rose in rebellion. Subject species that had been enslaved for generations saw hope for the first time and fought for their freedom. The Dracoth military was exhausted. They had lost too many ships and too many soldiers. Their industrial capacity was damaged by constant raids. Their leadership was fractured by internal disputes about strategy. Some commanders wanted to keep fighting. Others wanted to retreat and consolidate what remained of their empire. The arguments turned violent. Dracoth officers killed each other in struggles for power. Within 2 years of the Battle of Karas, the Dracoth Empire was unrecognizable. Their territory had shrunk by half. Most of their subject species had successfully revolted and established their own independent governments. The Dracoth homeworld sealed itself behind massive defensive barriers and stopped responding to outside communication. They withdrew completely, hiding behind their walls and nursing their hatred. The war was over. Not because anyone signed a treaty or negotiated peace terms, but because the Dracoth simply stopped being a threat. They were broken. Humanity and the Council had won. The Galactic Council organized a grand victory ceremony on Valoris Prime. Every member species sent representatives. The assembly hall was decorated with banners and lights. Speeches were prepared celebrating the triumph of cooperation and determination over tyranny and evil. It was meant to be a moment of unity and pride. The human delegation consisted of 3 people. Admiral Kate Morrison came representing the military. General Nathan Cross came representing Earth's defense leadership. And Ambassador Claire Hughes came as the official diplomatic representative. They arrived quietly without fanfare or celebration. They wore simple uniforms, not fancy ceremonial dress. Council representatives expected the humans to sit in the crystal seat that had been waiting for them all these years. Surely now, after fighting together and bleeding together, humanity would finally accept their place in the Council. Surely they had earned it and would claim it. The humans walked past the empty seat without even glancing at it. They went to the observers' gallery instead, where independent traders and non-aligned species sat. They took seats there, among people who had no formal connection to the Council. Several Council members noticed this and looked confused. Some looked hurt. The ceremony proceeded as planned. Chancellor Brahm gave a speech honoring all who had fought and died. Senator Kyaran spoke about the importance of unity. Representatives from liberated species gave emotional testimonies about their suffering and their gratitude. It was moving and sincere. Many people cried. The cost of the war had been terrible, but at least it was over. Admiral Morrison was invited to speak on behalf of humanity. She stood at the podium and looked out at the assembled delegates. She could see hope in their eyes. They thought she would announce Earth's decision to join the Council. They thought this was the moment when humanity finally came home. On behalf of Earth and all human colonies, Morrison began, I thank the Council for this ceremony. We honor the memory of those who fell in battle. We celebrate the freedom of those who were liberated. And we look forward to continued friendship between humanity and Council species. She paused and the chamber was silent, waiting for what would come next. But I must be clear about something, Morrison continued. Humanity's position has not changed. We fought the Dracoth because it was right, not because we wanted council membership. We stand with you against evil, but we stand as independent allies, not as subordinates. The seat you built for us will remain empty. That is our choice, and we ask you to respect it. You could feel disappointment wash over the chamber like a physical wave. Some representatives looked angry. Others looked sad. A few nodded in understanding. After the ceremony ended, Chancellor Brahm approached Ambassador Hughes. He was an old diplomat who had been part of the council leadership for decades. He had hoped to see humanity join before he retired. Ambassador Hughes, he said, surely now is the time. You fought beside us. You bled beside us. You saved countless lives. The empty seat has waited long enough. Please take your rightful place among us. Hughes smiled at him. It was a kind smile, not mocking or cruel. Chancellor, I have great respect for you and for the council. But that seat was never meant for us. When you built it with certain expectations. You expected us to follow your laws. You expected us to accept your authority. You expected us to become part of your system. Yes, Brahm said, because that is how the council works. We are stronger together. We achieve more through cooperation. I agree, Hughes said. Cooperation is valuable, but there is a difference between cooperation and submission. The council requires its members to surrender some of their sovereignty. You make collective decisions that bind everyone. That works for you. It works for the species who want it, but it does not work for humanity. Brahm looked frustrated. But why? What is so important about your independence that you would refuse everything we offer? Hughes thought carefully about her answer. Because we have learned through painful experience that freedom is too precious to surrender. Throughout our history, humans have fought and died for the right to govern themselves. We have seen what happens when authority becomes centralized and absolute. We know the dangers. Yes, independence means we make our own mistakes. Yes, it means we cannot blame anyone else when things go wrong. But it also means we control our own destiny. She gestured toward the empty seat. That seat represents something beautiful to you. Unity, cooperation, mutual advancement. I understand why you value those things. But to us, that seat represents compromise we are not willing to make. It represents surrendering choices that we believe are ours to make. We would rather stand alone and free than sit in that seat as subordinates to external authority. What if we change the requirements? Brahm asked. What if membership came with no obligations? Would you join then? Hughes shook her head gently. If membership had no obligations, it would not mean anything. The council works because its members accept limitations on their sovereignty in exchange for collective benefits. That is a fair trade. Many species benefit from it. It is just not right for humanity. Brahm was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed. I understand. I do not agree, but I understand. Will you at least continue to work with us? Continue to trade and share information? Of course, Hughes said warmly. We never wanted to be enemies or strangers. We just want to be friends and allies on our own terms. We will trade with you. We will coordinate on security matters. We will share scientific discoveries. We will help each other when needed. But we will do all of that as independent equals, not as council members. That evening, the council voted on a new resolution. It officially recognized humanity as a permanent independent ally. A new category was created just for them. Associated Free Nation. Humanity would have observer status at council meetings. They would have full trading privileges across council space. Military cooperation agreements would continue. But the council would have no authority over human affairs. It was the best compromise anyone could think of. Admiral Morrison accepted the new designation in a brief speech. We thank the council for this recognition. We look forward to continued cooperation. But let me say this clearly. Our position has not changed because of this war or this designation. We did not fight the Dracoth for council approval. We did it because it was right. That empty seat will remain empty not because we reject you, but because we reject the premise that we need permission to be free. She looked around the chamber one last time. Earth's seat was never meant to be filled. It is a reminder that in this vast galaxy there are many ways to be civilized, many paths to take among the stars. Humanity's path is our own. We will walk it alone if necessary, alongside others when possible, but always on our own terms. That is not pride. That is not stubbornness. That is simply who we are. News of the decision spread across both council and human space. Reactions were mixed. Some council species were disappointed. Others respected humanity's consistency. A few even started questioning whether they should reconsider their own membership, though most ultimately decided to stay. In human space, the decision was celebrated. President Victoria Lang gave a statement from Earth. "We never needed the galaxy's approval. We needed only the courage to be ourselves, the wisdom to choose our own path, and the strength to defend those choices. The seat remains empty because we were never meant to fill it. Our place is not in their chamber, but out here among the stars, free." Years passed. The galaxy settled into a new normal. Human colonies continued to expand. Trade flourished between humans and dozens of other species, both council members and independents. Scientific cooperation led to new discoveries. Cultural exchanges enriched everyone involved. The empty crystal seat remained in the assembly hall. Some council members stopped noticing it after a while. It just became part of the furniture, something that had always been there. But new council members arriving for